Britain's canal network in a poor state. The campaigners had two goals: to stop the government closing canals and to persuade it to spend money to restore those that were being left to die.
Spy. Oh.
And then we got
Wild Sam. Oh my god. Ugh. Disgusting. You farted. We have captured a Wild Sam.
First of all, I just want to say, no family member here representing their loved ones got up one day and decided to be an activist. It was frosted upon us by a life-changing experience when our loved one was murdered by the state. When I was just 11 years old, police burst into my house in the morning looking for my brother who wasn't there and didn't live with us, and they shot my mum.
Sometimes I think all this paraphernalia is too much, but you know, I cut out all of his school books, all of his writing his name. These are them. Whenever I feel like it, we have a load of his photos that are not exactly in chronological order, but sort of. And when I looked at it, I thought, oh, Ruby's in it. I won't check, because I was going to change it. I thought, oh no, I'm not going to change it. You can see yourself.
No, that's like the stone circle, that.
Yeah.
I remember I think that was the last day of year 11.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you've got the lovely person and then you've got the manner of the death. And it's really, from my point of view, best not to focus too much on the trauma, because the trauma has done us all in so much. And the trauma affects you physically, and you don't want to be going over that all the time.
I'm Anna Susianta and I'm Jack's mum. Jack was born in the Royal London Hospital. That was in 1998.
He was like in my shadow at school. My mum describes it as like he idolised me growing up. He would watch me play PlayStation. He wouldn't want to play. He'd want to watch me that was a sort of relationship.
Jack was very, very sensitive and kind of crazy sometimes in his enthusiasm and joy. We were at a hotel in Bali and he just, fully clothed, jumped into the pool and he couldn't swim. He enjoyed doing things so much that he just, would go to the limit.
Do you remember the first time you met Jack?
Yeah, I do. First seeing Jack, he was standing with Fabio and a few other boys. I can't remember who it was. And I genuinely thought, like, who is this guy? Like, I've not seen him for I've never seen him. And he was wearing this, what I thought at the time, and I still do think, this really cool jumper, but it was nothing special. It was a like plain black jumper, but it was big enough to go over his blazer, and he had it zipped up, so it almost looked very like fitting, like he looked really like he looked stylish in it. And I remember saying to him, like, that was the first thing I said, I was like, oh mate, where did you get your jumper from? And he kind of looked at me and he was like, H&M, like as if I was an idiot. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. You know, he took a lot of people for what they were, and I think that was the most beautiful thing about him. It was hard for me to remember or put a finger on like the first time we ever became friends, because he always felt like he'd always been my friend.
Give it to Jack. Yes. Good job.
The kids learning Spanish all went to Spain, and he went to some zoo where they held live lizards, and then he bought this and they all laughed that he'd bought them, but he loved it.
And then I remember thinking like, man, I love this guy. He's so fun. That we took some trip one of the days to a Spanish town. What if we just like asked if we could just go climb that hill instead of going with the rest of the group? And Jack was like, yeah, I'm on it as well. So we were just like, okay. So we just started walking, and it was the three of us, and just like really nice and confident of Jack to have done that. Yeah. So glad he did.
Oh shit, yeah, no, that has to be up, man. Come on. People are going to see that it's been shuffled about. So this is a letter that I actually forgot about, that I wrote to Anna. I guess like just after Jack died. So it says, one thing I'll never forget was just after our year 11 prom, walking down Thornby Road with Jack, and he turned around to me and said, Jesse, I think we can safely say we're best friends now. Which I do remember, to be fair, followed by the manliest possible hug.
Jack was more adventurous than me. I was a creature of comfort, whereas Jack would try new things and put himself out there.
I remember one example, really strong example of Jack, when we were doing the Mossbawn football trials for the football team, which I was nowhere near getting into. Don't think I touched the ball. But he was moved up from the kind of bottom level that I was in to another pitch. And I remember thinking, wow, yeah, he's really good at football. And I was impressed by that. That's the first time I kind of heard his name. I was like, okay, that's Jack.
He would get pissed off about football usually the most. That's when he would be most serious and pissed off. If like Arsenal had he's so fucking shit. I can visualise that in my head as well, like the two sides of it, just the wings. We used to go to park and play football. Oh, this was another thing. There's a cage in Hackney Downs Park where the kids would play football. It's got goals on either side. But I remember there was this new thing. People were starting to play polo in there. Polo in Hackney. But it wasn't just normal polo, it was bike polo. This was gentrifier behaviour. And then they came on their bikes. Oh, hi guys, how long are you going to be in the cage? Oh, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes. We were there for another hour, still playing, and they were still waiting. Guys, come on, we gave you 30 minutes. It's all about sharing. Oh, sorry, yeah, that's fine. We kept stalling for time, and then they were like, right, come on guys, time to go. And we were like, oh yeah, next goal wins. So we just kept playing, and we just pretended to miss every time. Oh, fuck, it's so close. Oh, next goal wins, next goal. Oh, I missed.
But I think having a baby really young, it was hard and it was quite isolating from my friends. And I think Arthur and all of his friends kind of scooped me up a little bit because I was stuck at home most evenings and weekends. You know, I'd be downstairs and they'd all be playing poker, and it was this like bunch of boys who I wasn't super close to. And Jack would come and sit on the corner and tell me all about Bali and wouldn't really pay much attention to the poker. And I thought it was really sweet that he like took a bit of time out to kind of chat to me. And he'd always, he played a lot of like rap, I think, when I wasn't there on the speaker. And then when I was there, he'd play like Clean Bandit and stuff. And I remember being like, stop it, just play what you want. turned to clean bandit. And I remember being like, that's really sweet. Like, he's like trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but it's like a really sweet kind of sentiment. And I remember thinking, this is such a lovely boy.
I remember, crucially, everyone liked Jack. That was always what I would be like. Everyone, I'd see him hang out with everyone, which was a rare thing in Mossbawn. Everyone was, I feel like it was a bit cliquey, unfortunately.
Jack was always very authentic, you know what I mean? He was always like very genuine. It's the thing, that whole kind of toxic thing at that age of like, you know, everyone wanting to be popular and everyone wanting to do. Jack was kind of never really part of, like, never wanted to be involved in any of that. I remember that quite clearly.
He could jump really high and put his fingerprints on the white, and I always used to tell him off. You can just, there's a kind of a hand, isn't there? But I don't know how much longer. And I've also painted over his notice on the door of his bedroom when he was about, I don't think he was about 12 or 13. He put on it, he wrote on the outside of his door, "No girls allowed." And I said, "But I'm a girl, so I'm never allowed in your room." And then he wrote underneath later, and I noticed, "Except for Mum." Well, he did get excluded, but not permanently. These boys were talking about guns, and he said, "Oh, my dad's got a gun." And they said, "Right, well, if you really have, bring it in tomorrow." So he did.
So I remember one of the first times I met Jack was when I heard he got in trouble for bringing a BB gun into school. And I remember thinking at the time, like, who's this guy? Why is he bringing a BB gun into school? Who do you think he is? Jack, man. I remember just like, being a kid, you could get away with so much more bullshit. And most of my like memories with Jack, obviously, we were kids.
I think we all thought we were the coolest group in the school, which we were, but we had like a massive eagerness to grow up really quickly. We were very, very young, doing very silly things. The innocence of childhood, I think, is so precious, and I do think like we chopped a little bit of that out of our life that we won't get back. And that feels quite sad.
There was a lot of hanging out in parks. There was a lot of Hackney Marshes. That was the spot, and it was hidden, and it was, no one else would go there. It was just, I feel like it was just us there all the time.
It's not the most pretty area of Hackney, that area, but you know, it's got a very dear place in like all our hearts.
Hi Kieran, it's Ruby. Hello, hon.
Oh my days. Oh, so what, you want to interview me? Alright, cool.
Okay, let's go guys.
So this is Morton Close.
Oh my days. Oh, I'm so proud. Right, so you're doing this documentary, yeah?
It's actually wild that we used to sit in these marshes. What was that bush? Yeah, just by that bush.
With the gnats eating at you.
Blackberry bush, we called it. That was the spot to go, to the blackberry bush.
This is so weird, but for me to like keep remembering his voice, I always have in my head. Yeah, I always have in my head him saying Ruby. It's so weird because he says it like, I don't know. I just have like a really clear memory of him saying Ruby, so I just replay that in my head quite a few times.
There's the river, like it goes across past the marshes up towards Springfield. We just like used to hang out like next to the ice rink, like kind of behind the ice rink, on just like a random field.
I just feel like now I go there and it makes me feel it feels bleak. It feels like a sad place.
I don't really go to the bench actually, if I'm being honest. It's always been a weird thing for me, I think, where it was such a like horrible thing to go through that you almost don't want to be reminded by it. you know, a lot of my kind of way of dealing with it maybe was slightly avoiding going to that bridge for a period, for a while, and just, it was easier to kind of try and disconnect in a way.
It was a really fun summer. We were going out a lot to sixth form parties, just having a really fun time together. I remember it being really fun.
The first one was like our first ever festival, so it was very upbeat.
I knew most of you, and I thought you were pretty organised and that you would look after each other.
Who did you travel there with?
The whole gang, we all went together. We went, where did we meet? King's Cross. We got a Gold Line minibus. But I went into the second one expecting what the first year would be, and it was all butterflies and rainbows and having fun. But I think the second one didn't feel as family friendly, or like I didn't feel as safe from the outset.
I remember it rained a lot. Shit.
It was a fucking wasteland. Well, it was like mud, the bottles of piss that people chucked out their tents, people abandoned tents, like rubbish strewn everywhere. And like the big moment with Jack I remember about this festival is me and him, just before we go and leave, going and standing under Maisie's tent waiting for everyone and just catching up about the weekend. This was the last time I properly spoke to him, is actually joining him under the tent and him saying, "Thanks for joining me under here." And then just having a little catch up while everyone else was fumbling around in the mud outside.
I'm scared of the feeling. It's just disgusting. It was so bad and it was so rainy. Someone was like, "I'm leaving a day early," and I was like, "Fuck it, I want to come." And they're like, "I've got a cab in like 10 minutes. You gotta like jump in the cab now." So I was like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna jump in the cab. I'll leave the tent." And then I got my friend Jude and Jack, actually, they like packed up my tent for me. And then after everything that happened, I remember the tent just sitting in the like garden essentially, and just like looking at it sometimes and thinking like, fuck, that's like the last like connection I have like with him.
Do you remember anything about the journey back?
Yeah, so I was on that bus. I was sitting next to Jack. I remember there was this song, Ichi Ma, which is like this Korean and I think it's Japanese, like kind of rap song that Jack loved. And I made this kind of joke, like the ending of one of the lyrics sort of sounds like Londis. So I like said it and then pointed at Londis. And then he just kind of didn't react. And I was like, okay, he must just be tired or something. Maybe it just wasn't that funny.
I met him on Newick Road. I was just walking to the shop. That was when I knew immediately he was not in a good place.
Yeah, he was kind of muddy and
dazed. He was just super dazed and worried about our parents finding out he'd taken drugs. His own fear of like not knowing how he was feeling sort of escalated to a point of psychosis.
And I was out hanging out the washing and he came up to me and he just broke down. Jack broke down in tears. And it just got worse and worse and worse. "Why don't you go to bed?" And he said, "No, you all come." So we all lay in bed together.
And I remember we slept in his bed and we watched a movie until we all fell asleep. And I remember waking up in the morning and he was just looking up at the ceiling. Yeah, in bed, and I was like, oh God, like, I don't know what to do.
I think Porter and Sam had got out of the bed and were going to go and cook for him. And he heard a baby crying in the house opposite and he flipped. He just got up and went downstairs and jumped over the sidewall. I've often looked at it to think, how on earth did he do that? Sam went after him. We were like freaking out, trying to find our shoes. He actually asked some people, "Can you help me? These people." And we were like, we're his mum and dad. And then he knocked a boy off a bicycle and took his bike and cycled off.
So people started messaging in the group chat saying like, has anyone seen Jack, etc.
We were in a group chat on Facebook, and that's how we were constantly feeding each other the information.
Basically, she just said that he came home, was bare emotional, and like was a bit like tipsy-topsy, and he got bare aggressive, and he just grabbed the bike with no phone and ran away, and he didn't know who, she said he didn't know who they were and what he was doing there, and like he was just so baffed, and he just ran away, and they're in the car trying to look for him, and they can't find him, and no one knows where he is.
I had to be here, I called the police and they told me to wait an hour, 2 hours, and said, oh, he's gonna calm down and go to a friend's. And I said, I don't think he'll know how to get or who his friends are.
Completely, got completely scared, as we all did, and went out looking for him. Didn't find him.
We have literally looked everywhere. We looked in the graveyard, Mare Street, we're walking around Tesco car park, then my brother and my mum looked in LF, and me, Ruby and Francis, Fran, we went down to the bottom where the bridge is. We just haven't seen anything. There's nothing to, nowhere else to check.
Yeah, I remember it. Like I could probably go and do the day for you again. My mum said like, is there any more information on where he is, etc. And I said like, oh, apparently he's in the marshes.
I've been on the boat about 12 years, and I've lived here in this same spot for about 10, 11 years. I was off work, I was doing some DIY in the boat, and I'd pop out every now and again to get a bit of fresh air, and I noticed a whole load of people up at the bridge, so I wandered along to see what was happening.
So we go to the marshes, past the Lee Valley ice rink, and there's traffic, and it's chock-a-block traffic. And I think while we're heading over there, you can see there's helicopters out and about. And I think, you get that feeling that this is to do with Jack, the helicopter's to do with Jack. And it's the same feeling whenever I hear a helicopter again now, especially in the summer. It's something to do with the summer air. It makes me anxious.
And I think that was just after Jack had got in the water, so there was a few police about. And I remember speaking to a lady who had asked the police if she could go in, and told not to. And I was asking the police as well and saying, I live in a boat here, I know the area, and more or less told just to stand back and don't cause any trouble.
There was loads of, I remember firemen, and then whoever the boat people are, but they could have been the firemen. And they had these dinghies, and I remember them winching it out the water, and I remember a woman and a man carrying it from the top.
So I watched, and I don't know how many times, but I could see Jack would come up, and then he would go under the water, and then he would come up and go under the water, and that happened several times. And it wasn't until he went down and stayed down for some minutes before a police officer actually started to and got in the water.
Saw Fed and I went up to Fed and asked them if he's been found, and they were like, we can't tell you anything. And so me and Maisie have just been waiting here. Then we heard some next girl come past, we've been waiting here for 2 hours, he's obviously dead.
How could anybody let this happen? This is insane. I think you shouldn't be the there's, you know, ambulance, fire, and police, and TSG, and somebody still dies. That's, you know, what? Yeah. Like, everybody let him slip through. It's ridiculous. And probably maybe a big part of it, and I think for Anna a big part of it, is that it doesn't happen to anyone else again.
Why was nobody thinking about being in the water and having a rope tied to them, for God's sake? And I kept on expecting something to happen and hoping something like that would happen. I'm a good swimmer. I've done sort of life-saving certificates. I should have been in that bloody water. You bow down to authority, don't you? They must know what they're doing somehow, so I'll be a good citizen and do what I'm told.
Yeah, it's trust.
Stupidly, looking back on it at the time.
Jack Susianta's drowning last summer drew this headline in the Mirror: "Police refuse to rescue drowning boy." This week, a picture's emerged at St Pancras Coroner's Court, which shows that not everything is what it seems.
We've been campaigning for decades in the United Kingdom, where we've suffered deaths at the hands of the police, in prisons, in mental health settings, where there's been excessive use of force. You know, we have long drawn out investigations. I just want to remind people of deaths that actually happened in Hackney. And we want to remember Jack Susianta, whose mother Anna is here. They are the latest deaths that happened here in Hackney, and this is why it's so important that families stick together. Thank you for all the work that you do with us, Anna, for UFFC, and your beautiful son will never be forgotten.
I'd like to first say, although I don't know her well, the times that I've met Anna, I think at a time when she was going through intense shock and grief, she still made space for a group of young people who she didn't need to come into her house, sit in her garden and explore how we were feeling, even though she was probably going through the most intense grief and pain you can imagine as a mum.
The thing is, it's so hard to describe somebody who's died and to put your sort of thoughts into memories and stuff. And I really feel that it's important to think in terms of the wider picture and the police and everything, that he was just a typical lad and that he wasn't special. He was special to me, but he wasn't special. He was just one of your group. And it's hard when, you know, why aren't we making a film about one of them, one of the others? That kind of thing. I sort of think, I'd like to know how, you know, my life was sort of over. So I've got like 2 lives, but one of them was till I was 57 and then boom, and then it's completely different life. But yours were at the beginning of your life and you were only just beginning to step out, and that's so different.